Hello, my name is Okechukwu Nzelu. I'm the author of The Private Joys of Nnenna Maloney, and I'm here to talk about plot. So, my novel, The Private Joys of Nnenna Maloney, I started figuring out the plot in my head. I always try to do a lot in my head as much as possible because it feels more organic that way. If I write things down too soon, for some reason it starts to make me feel like things are too fixed. So I really like to just let things swim in my head for a long time. The first job I had after university was a really boring admin job where I was just filing all the debt all the time, and it meant that I had a lot of brain space, so that I got very used to sort of filing and photocopying while thinking up plot points in my head and changing things and experimenting with things and revising things, and that really got me into the habit of relying on my brain a lot more than paper. And so when I finally did come to write things down on paper in terms of plot and planning things out, it felt like this kind of bizarre landscape in which to be working. Once I've done a first draft of something, I like to have that sort of concrete visual representation of where things are going and when. So I've used spreadsheets before. I find those really helpful because you can clearly see, okay, chapter 1, here's what's happening with this character, chapter 2, chapter 3, and so on and so forth. And I found that really helpful. When I was thinking about the flashing between decades and things, because in my novel, the main character, Nnenna, is born obviously long after her mother is, and we see Nnenna's life and Nnenna's sort of relationships and friendships and her relationship with her mother in one sort of time of the novel, and then we also see in a different time period obviously her mother meeting her father and their relationship developing and breaking down, and we see what happens, and that was something that I always knew that I wanted to do. It was an essential part of the novel for me because the novel really, for me, at heart, is so much about the interconnectedness of human experience. It's about people whose lives may seem worlds apart, but are very connected, or people whose lives are quite closely connected, but in ways that even they don't understand. So it was really important to me to have those two sort of narratives running side by side. Nnenna's sort of coming of age when she's about to turn 17, and her mother's also coming of age in a different way when she's at university and she's turning sort of 21-ish, and she's having experiences that really make her question a lot of stuff and really trouble her and affect her in a lot of ways for the rest of her life. It's really important to me to link those, as well as the experiences of other people who are much less closely related than those two. So Nnenna's friends, some of whom are queer, some of whom are poor, Joni's sort of boyfriend at the time, Nnenna's father, and his Christian friends who are experiencing doubt and self-doubt and all sorts of troubles, which I won't spoil by going into in too much detail now, but I wanted to sort of illustrate how closely those things are related. In terms of how I plotted the movement of things backwards and forwards in time, a lot of it was trial and error. I didn't have any formal writing training when I started writing the novel, and still don't really now, and so a lot of what I did was just trial and error, writing several drafts and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, and that took a lot of time and hard work, but I just had to follow my instincts, show my work to people whose opinions I trusted, and really develop a resilience for criticism, which was hard. But because when you're writing, I think it's so personal to you that it's easy to either think of your work as completely worthless or to completely withstand criticism at all, and it's about finding the balance between the two of those things. So for me, a lot of the things that happen in the novel that I'm proud of happened more or less by accident, because I just kept trying different things. I found the way I wanted to tell the story in terms of the dual narratives by accident. I found the way I wanted to use humour also by accident. And there was a really wonderful sort of joyous eureka moment when you realise that that's how you want to write your story. It was really wonderful for me. In terms of what I've learned from this, So I'm also a teacher, and writing and teaching are a lot alike, in that what you are doing and how you do it are really, really closely linked. So as a teacher, I find, what I want to teach and how I go about teaching it, it's quite hard to separate the two, and you sort of have to arrive at the two of them at the same time. The same is true with writing. If I had told this story in a different way, if I had told the story as one narrative instead of two, if I hadn't used humour, if I hadn't tried to make it funny at all, it would have been a completely different story. And it's not just the way of telling the story that would have been different, but the story itself. And that's something I don't think I realised before I started writing and redrafting, is that the what and the how are in some ways the same thing. How the story is told is in part the story, and that's something that I'm glad I know now, because writing a second book, it's not easier exactly, but I've gone into it with, I guess, a little bit of experience, which is helpful. I guess one piece of advice that I would pass on to other writers who are having a go would be experiment and leave as much room for change as you can. I think it's so easy to think of a published work as this wonderful finished thing that arrives fully conceived, but actually for me and for most writers, I think that is very far from the truth. So one thing I tried when I was writing my first book, and indeed now I'm writing my second, was starting the story at many different points. So the story could have started with Nnenna's birth, the birth of the main character. In fact, I chose to start the story years before that, when her parents first met. In fact, just before her parents first met, because I wanted the reader to get a sense of her parents as individuals. And that turned out to be something that was really important for me. Was the book was about coming of age, in the sense that we don't just learn about the world in that sort of abstract concept, but we learn about the people around us and the depth of their humanity in a real way. That's sort of one of the things about coming of age at any age, is that you learn that the people around you, whether they are parents who you might have expected to be perfect and strong and wonderful and all sorts of things, are actually human and frail and vulnerable, just like you. And that was a really important thing for me. So that was why I sort of experimented with, okay, where am I going to start this story? How am I best going to illustrate that? And I ended up doing that by starting the story at a completely different point from the one I initially expected to do. So that would be my tip. Try and start your story at a different point from where you might originally have thought you might do. It could take you to some unexpected places.